morning. You're watching A News. I'm Leila Masimova. Here's the top stories. U.S. tariffs are causing global concern. More than 50 countries have contacted the White House to start trade talks. South Korea's cabinet is set to approve a date for the upcoming presidential election for the 3rd of June. At least 30 people have died after severe flooding submerged streets and homes in Kinshasa, the capital of DR Congo. U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday said that sometimes you have to take medicine when asked about the pain of the markets, adding that it was not intentionally engineering a market sell-off. Speaking to reporters on board Air Force One, Trump said that he would not make a deal unless the trade deficit with China is solved. He added that he has spoken to European and Asian leaders on the tariffs rolled out by his administration.
Hundreds of billions of dollars a year we lose with China, and unless we solve that problem, I'm not going to make a deal. Now, I'm willing to deal with China, but they have to solve their surplus. We have a tremendous deficit problem with China. They have a surplus of at least $1 trillion a year. I think it's like $1.1 trillion. And I want that solved.
Europe, is that a place you'd like to also get to?
Well, the problem is that Europe has made a fortune with us. You know, Europe also has had a tremendous surplus with the United States. Europe has treated us, it's a little smaller, but they've treated us very, very badly. China has, but Europe has also. Europe has been very, very bad to us. Europe has taken our leaders for a ride. They don't take our cars. They don't take our food products. They don't take anything.
Is there pain in the market? At some point, you're unwilling to tolerate this idea of a Trump put. Is there a threshold?
I think your question is so stupid. I mean, I think it's I don't want anything to go down. But sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something.
U.S. tariffs imposed by President Trump are causing global concern, with some countries reacting strongly. More than 50 countries have contacted the White House to start trade talks, Trump advisor says, while some states have announced that they will not retaliate to Washington. Experts warn these tariffs could lead to higher prices, economic instability, and a global potential recession.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is visiting Washington, D.C. to discuss U.S. tariffs with President Donald Trump. This visit could be the first effort by a foreign leader to negotiate a deal in person with Trump to remove tariffs.
I can tell you that I am the first international leader that is meeting with Trump in regards to such an important issue to the Israeli economy. There is a long line of international leaders waiting to meet with Trump in regards to their economies. I think it shows the personal connection and the connection between our countries that is so essential in this time.
In related discussions, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron affirmed their resolve to work together on tariff issues with Trump. Macron emphasised that a trade war is in no one's interest, stressing unity for the benefit of citizens and businesses. China has responded by imposing a 34% tariff on all US imports starting April 10th as part of its retaliation against the US's tariff policies. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warned that trade wars harm all parties, especially vulnerable countries.
He said it before. He said it more than a month ago that in a trade war, nobody wins. Right. Our concern right now is that with the most vulnerable countries who are the least equipped to deal with the current situation.
Meanwhile, countries like Indonesia, Taiwan and India have decided not to retaliate against US tariffs. Trade experts have criticised the US for imposing reciprocal tariffs, warning of potential backlash and negative effects on domestic inequality. They warned that the policy would ultimately hurt the consumers.
Ordinary working Americans will pay for a tax cut that will be enjoyed by a small number. But I would say that the long-run effect of this is bound to be that more and more countries will shift their trade away from the United States.
On Wednesday, US President Trump signed an executive order imposing a 10% minimum tariff on all imports, with higher rates for selected nations. If the tariffs take effect as planned, American families are expected to face higher prices on imported goods, particularly clothing and footwear, as most of these products are imported from Asia. Companies like Walmart, Gap and Nike could see significant price increases. Markets worldwide saw a major downturn this week, with US stocks experiencing their worst performance since the 2020 pandemic. Analysts warn that Trump's tariffs could lead to a global recession, with losses in US stock markets reaching $5 trillion. While companies like Apple and Nike suffered losses, small US businesses face potential closures. Despite the economic turmoil, Trump has defended his tariff approach.
As global trade tensions rise, the automotive industry is feeling the impact of US President Trump's 25% tariffs. As the Seoul Mobility Show, exhibitors are adapting their strategies in response to the tariffs.
At the 30th annual Seoul Mobility Show on Saturday, exhibitors and attendees gathered to showcase the latest in automotive and construction technology, all while navigating the challenges posed by global tariffs. The event, held in South Korea, opened amidst escalating trade tensions triggered by the 25% reciprocal tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump, which affected countries including South Korea. These tariffs are expected to increase prices for consumers and disrupt the global auto industry.
I invest in stocks, so I'm experiencing significant losses due to the tariffs. As for vehicles, I think sales will vary depending on how the brand makes them and what their good points are, regardless of the tariffs.
In response to the 25% tariff on imported vehicles, Jaguar Land Rover has paused US shipments for April, citing the importance of the US market for its luxury brands. This move reflects broader challenges facing the UK auto industry, including declining demand and the shift to electric vehicles. The 25% tariffs on imported vehicles will impact global automakers like Volkswagen, Toyota, Honda, Hyundai and Kia. German automakers, including BMW and Mercedes-Benz, will face higher costs due to parts imported from countries like Germany and Mexico. Japanese and South Korean automakers, heavily reliant on US exports, will also be affected.
South Korea's cabinet is set to approve a date for the upcoming presidential election for the 3rd of June. The decision follows the removal of President Yoon Suk-yeol from office last week after his martial law declaration violated his duties. A new election must be held within 60 days after a president's removal. The final date will become official only when it's declared by acting president and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. Civilians in Poland are getting hands-on military training amid growing concerns over regional security. A weekend drill brought people of all ages together under the Train with the Army program.
In the port city of Gdynia, ordinary Polish citizens, men and women, put on uniforms and picked up rifles. It's part of the Ministry of Defence's Train with the Army program, now in its 6th round since launching in 2022. The 2-month courses teach basic military skills, how to handle weapons, personal defense, survival tactics, and first aid.
Until the war in Ukraine broke out, I didn't think about military training at all. But now I see what's happening in the world. I'm a patriot and believe we must be prepared.
Jakiś niepokój rośnie I ten
There's this growing anxiety. We don't know how the conflict will develop or if it might reach Poland or the Baltics. Either way, we'll be involved.
Sytuacji politycznej, że tak się wyrażę, no nie jest pewny.
The initiative is part of a wider national push to strengthen defence readiness. Prime Minister Donald Tusk recently announced plans to train 100,000 volunteers by 2027, with incentives like getting commercial driving licenses during service. Galvanized by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Poland now leads NATO in defence spending, planning to hit 4.7% of GDP this year. It wants to raise that to 5% by 2026. United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio has called on other NATO members to follow Poland's lead.
Pope Francis appeared in public for the first time since his hospitalization, greeting crowds at the Vatican in a brief emotional moment.
In his first public appearance since being released from hospital, Pope Francis greeted worshippers in St. Peter's Square on Sunday. Seated in a wheelchair and wearing a nasal oxygen tube, the 88-year-old pontiff waved to the crowd following a special mass marking the Catholic Church's Jubilee year.
Buona domenica. Happy Sunday to everyone. Thank you so much.
The crowd applauded warmly as the Pope, visibly frail but smiling, made his way from the altar. Faithful expressed their joy after Pope Francis makes surprise appearance at Vatican.
It was a beautiful experience. I started crying. I never imagined I would be able to be here, and it was, I don't know how to explain it. It was just a feeling that I have no words for. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I was very happy. For me, it was like a very, very important moment in my life. Because before Pope John Paul II, I didn't see him anyway. So now it was for me very excited. I love Pope, and I am very glad to be there. So everything was very, very special for me.
It was Pontiff's first sighting since March 23rd, when he left Rome's Gemelli Hospital after more than 5 weeks of treatment. Pope Francis had been battling double pneumonia, a serious lung infection, making this his most severe health issue in his 12-year papacy.
Yemen's Houthi rebels say U.S. airstrikes on Saturday killed at least 2 people and wounded 9 late Saturday. Local media show a 2-story building collapsing in the Hussein area. Another strike on Sunday in the capital hit a home, killing at least 4 and injuring more than 20 others, according to officials. U.S. airstrikes also targeted areas west of the capital. The White House says more than 200 strikes targeting the Houthis have been carried out so far. Houthi leaders vote retaliation. Now to Gaza, where new video evidence has emerged the killing of 15 Palestinian emergency workers near Rafah. The footage recovered from a victim's phone appears to contradict the Israeli military's original account, showing paramedics and clearly marked vehicles under fire. Both United Nations and the Palestinian Red Crescent are now calling for independent international investigation, saying this may amount to a war crime.
The Palestinian Red Crescent on Sunday called for an independent international investigation into the killing of 15 emergency workers near the southern Gaza city of Rafah last month. The demand comes after newly released video footage appeared to contradict the Israeli military's version of events. The paramedics and emergency responders were shot dead on March the 23rd and buried in a shallow grave. Their bodies were discovered a week later by officials from the United Nations and the Palestinian Red Crescent. One man remains unaccounted for.
Accountability should never require video evidence. It should not take a global outrage for the truth to be acknowledged. The truth was always there. The Palestine Red Crescent medics were wearing their Red Crescent emblem. They were wearing their uniforms and they were driving ambulances that were clearly marked and all emergency lights were on. Now the Palestine Red Crescent Society calls for an independent international investigation. We need justice for the victims and we need to ensure that all of those who are responsible are held to account. Without this, the crimes will continue to happen. Without this, the systematic targeting for humanitarians, aid workers, and medics will continue to happen.
The organisation is calling it a deliberate attack on humanitarian workers.
These are crimes against humanity and war crimes. The international community must intervene and compel Israel to respect international humanitarian law, which prohibits targeting medical personnel and ambulances during conflict.
The Israeli officials initially claimed that its forces had opened fire on vehicles that approached their position in what they described as suspiciously in the dark, without lights or identification. According to their account, 9 militants from Hamas and Islamic Jihad were travelling in Palestinian Red Crescent vehicles. The United Nations also demanding an independent international investigation into the incident.
Hamas says it fired a barrage of rockets at southern Israeli cities on Sunday. Israel's military says about 10 projectiles were fired, with most of them intercepted. However, a direct hit was reported in Ashkelon, where emergency services treated one person for shrapnel injuries. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called for, quote, a vigorous response to the latest barrage. Meanwhile, Gaza local health authorities say Israeli military strikes have killed at least 39 people yesterday. Severe flooding has struck Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, on Sunday, submerging streets and homes in the city's first major deluge of the year. The death toll has risen to at least 30, according to the latest reports from local authorities. Kinshasa, home for more than 12 million people, faces frequent flooding during a rainy season, exacerbated by poor drainage with informal settlements in the low-lying areas. The flooding highlights ongoing urban management challenges in the Democratic Republic of Congo's largest city, where similar incidents in recent years have prompted calls for improved infrastructure. The Iranian rial hit a record low of 1,039,000 to the US dollar, losing over half of its value since President Pezeshkian took office. This comes amid escalating tensions over Iran's nuclear program, with US President Trump offering talks which were rejected by Supreme Leader Khamenei. Sanctions, inflation at 40%, and the flight to hard currencies are further destabilizing Iran's economy. The rial has dropped from 55,000 to the dollar in 2018 as Trump's sanctions campaign continues to tighten. Rabbi Mark Schneier, a prominent interfaith leader, commented on Israel's I-24 News about a recently foiled Iranian plot to assassinate Rabbi Shanior Segal, chief rabbi of the Ashkenazi community in Baku. He praised the swift and effective response of Azerbaijan's security services, describing it as a stellar example of the country's dedication to protecting its Jewish community. In January, Azerbaijan's state security service reported that they foiled a terrorist plot targeting the Jewish community in Baku, arresting an 18-year-old Abdullah Aliyev linked to ISIS Khorasan. Authorities say Aliyev planned an attack on the Baku Mountain Jewish synagogue and a local Jewish education center, carrying Molotov cocktails, knives and axe. when apprehended near the synagogue in December last year. Rabbi Shanor Sigal, a prominent figure, was amongst the intended targets.
Well, the star of the plot is the president of Azerbaijan, President Aliyev. You know, when we think of Azerbaijan, as I have repeatedly shared on your show, that of the 57 Muslim nations, I believe Azerbaijan is Israel's greatest supporter. At the same time, President Aliyev has this extraordinary commitment and reverence for the Jewish community of Azerbaijan. There are close to 25,000 Jews who lead a very prosperous Jewish life in Baku and other cities and regions in Azerbaijan. It is yet again a testament to President Aliyev in terms of his commitment not only to the state of Israel, but to the Jewish people as a whole. I think it's the safest place for Jews. It's a country that has no anti-Semitism. It's remarkable that this is a Jewish community. Some people believe it's close to 2,000 years that the Jewish community has been present in Azerbaijan, going back to the days of the exile after the First Holy Temple. Nevertheless, it is a very, very safe place for Jews, not only who are living there, but for the tens of thousands of Jews that visit Azerbaijan, Baku, and their mountainous region.
The 150th Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union is being held in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. It brings all IPU statutory bodies together, including Governing Council and various committees. The general debate centers on parliamentary action for social development and justice, with resolutions on peace, international security and sustainable development. The Assembly will conclude with an outcome document on the debate theme. A trilateral mechanism for interparliamentary cooperation will be established between the parliaments of Turkey, Azerbaijan and Georgia. The agreement was reached during a meeting between the Speaker of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, Numan Kurtulmush, and his Georgian counterpart, Shalva Papashvili, in Tashkent. Kurtulmush said that they are interested in utilizing all diplomatic opportunities to expand their ties, and he hopes to establish a friendship group with Turkey and the Georgian parliament. Our colleague Orkan Amashov discussed the politics of connectivity with Arak Konichnian, president of the Research Center on Security Policy from Yerevan, Armenia, and from Baku, Azerbaijan, Vasif Husseinov, head of the department at the Center of Analysis of International Relations. Let's listen to their conversation.
It was the choice of Armenia to be in that situation. Now they are understanding that this blockade, self-imposed blockade, is creating huge economic burdens for Armenia and for the development of Armenia, its economy, as well as its geopolitical standing. It is extremely important to have stable access to all the neighboring countries, as well as through the neighboring countries beyond the region. In this context, while Armenia is trying to accelerate the process, but at the same time, Armenia is trying to avoid its major commitment enshrined in the trilateral statement, which was about giving unimpeded passage between mainland Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan.
You, in your speech, for example, talked about a missed opportunity to basically establish a custom control on the Armenian border. I don't share that opinion. I don't think it's a missed opportunity. It was, to an extent, all of the opportunities we're referring to can be referred to the Nagorno-Karabakh. But on the border, on the Armenian territory, there can be no missed opportunities. There can be only the conditions of the Armenian side. If someone doesn't like the Armenian conditions, he can just keep traveling through the territory of Armenia. He can travel through the territory of Iran. If that means continuation of the current logistics and of the current shut borders, so be it. Armenia survived it in 30 years.
You are watching A News. Stay tuned and have a wonderful morning.